Hi, everyone. If I could call the meeting to order, please. All right. I would like to begin with the territorial acknowledgement. We would like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather, land on which we are broadcasting from today, is the land traditionally cared for by the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, and Neutral people. We also acknowledge the enduring presence and deep traditional knowledge and philosophies of the Indigenous people with whom we share this land today. I would also like to mention that Brian Hill has left with Council and ECMT the Truth and Reconciliation Calls to Action. So you will find this on your desks. Thank you. So for a moment of reflection, at the beginning of this council meeting, we paused to think about the needs of our community. May we show wisdom and compassion in all our decisions. As we move forward, I would like to ask if there is any disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. Seeing none, I wanted to add that the report related to declaring land surplus is being deferred until February 22nd, so that will not be on the agenda today. Next is the approval of minutes. Do I have a mover to approve the minutes? Councillor Freeman. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Hanmer. Thank you.
Chair,
Yes.
there is a small correction to be made in the minutes.
Yes, go ahead, sorry.
On page 26, instead of saying previously, it says preciously. Sorry, the minutes from December, it was on page 26 when yeah. It's just a very funny instance of the word preciously, so it jumped out at me.
Yeah. And all in favor? Okay, thank you. Okay. I would like to now introduce presentations from IPPW. If I could ask Ron Ormson, Commissioner, Integrated Planning and Public Works, to please come forward.
Thank you, Chair Rowe. Good afternoon to you, Mayor McCabe, members of council. It is my privilege this afternoon to introduce the business plan for Integrated Planning and Public Works, and certainly to lead a dedicated team of over 170 people who provide essential services that the community uses every day. I'm joined this afternoon by IPPW directors who will each highlight key elements of the business plan with respect to their divisions, which includes input from many staff across the department and certainly the support of the 13 managers that are also in Integrated Planning and Public Works. Our 3-year business plan confirms and restates various multi-year initiatives from 2023 and highlights new initiatives with respect to council's strategic priorities, extensive legislative obligations, and evolving technical standards. Of particular importance for IPPW is the strategic priority for environmental sustainability and climate action that is inherent in the work across the department. And of course, the priority for the city's infrastructure and transportation systems that will enable future housing. First up will be Joel Cotter, Senior Director of IPPW, Director of Planning and City Planner. He'll be followed by Francis Reyes, Director of Engineering Services, Beth Maxwell, our Chief Building Official and Director of Building Standards, Bob Henderson, Director of Transportation, and then last but certainly not least, Lee McDermott, Lead Director, Waterloo Service Center and Director of City Utilities. We'd be pleased to take questions at any point throughout the presentation, and I will make some additional remarks at the end about some of the budget menu items. Thank you. Over to you, Joel.
Good afternoon. On behalf of the Planning Division, I want to provide just a brief overview of our business plan and some of the key initiatives that we'll be working on in 2024 through 2026. As listed on the screen, first off is the city's official plan review. This is a legislated requirement the city is required to undertake pursuant to the Planning Act. It will not be a rewrite of our existing official plan. It will essentially be an update, and we are proposing that phase 1 of the plan will be released for council review and public engagement in the first quarter of 2024. Next up is the affordable housing strategy implementation. As council will recall, in March of 2023, community planning brought forward the affordable housing strategy containing 81 actions. 59 of those actions are enabled to be implemented through active work plans. And really, the affordable housing strategy is a blueprint for action for the city to take with respect to affordable housing, recognizing that we are essentially a support group, and really affordable housing is primarily driven by the federal, provincial, and regional levels of government. Third on the list is the heritage planning review for non-designated properties. This is emanating out of Bill 23, a legislated requirement to review non-designated, or what we might call listed properties on the heritage designation, on the heritage registry, to determine whether full designation is appropriate. That work needs to be completed by January 1st, 2025. So we are undertaking that, or actively undertaking that work this year. And lastly, continue to pursue and advance a number of planning applications. The city receives a large number of applications each year. These are undertaken in accordance with our legislative obligations under various provincial documents, including the Planning Act, Condominium Act, the Ontario Heritage Act, and many others. It's also influenced by a number of provincial directives, and we are extremely busy in 2023. We processed just around 50 applications with the magnitude of, in terms of just residential, about 22,000 units being advanced in 2023. Those are just the applications we received last year. They don't include site plans or consent applications or any of the applications that we continue to work on from previous years. And so far in 2024, we've received 4 applications with just over 1,500 units. So extremely busy with development applications. In terms of community impact for each of those, the official plan will certainly create a clear vision and framework for community growth. The affordable housing strategy implementation will increase the supply of affordable housing in the city. The heritage review will look at the conservation of significant cultural heritage resources, and our planning applications will continue to build connected, healthy, sustainable, and living community. Be happy to answer any of council's questions.
I think we will hold questions until the end. Yes? Thank you.
Good afternoon. On behalf of Engineering Services, I'm here to present the key initiatives for the Engineering Services Division. First off, we have the Beaver Creek Road and Conservation Drive Reconstruction Project. This project will provide new infrastructure needed to support development in the Beaver Creek and Conservation Drive areas. Upgrading these corridors from rural to urban standards will also provide significant safety and mobility enhancements for current and future users. Next initiative is the Union Street reconstruction from King Street to Moore Avenue. This project will replace aging infrastructure along the Union Street corridor. It will also incorporate several safety and mobility enhancements, such as new pedestrian crossings at Herbert Street and the Spurline Trail, as well as wider sidewalks and new cycling facilities. Next initiative is Civic Common. This project is a priority initiative from the Uptown Public Realm strategy. The concept includes a public park and potential for adaptive reuse of the existing pumping station building for community benefit. Next initiative is the Brighton Trailhead and Laurel Trail pedestrian lighting project. This project includes improvements and installation of pedestrian lighting along Laurel Trail between Pepler and Weber Street. This project will improve safety along the trail through lighting, minor trail improvements, and it will also provide a small trailhead and resting area at the intersection of Brighton Street and Laurel Trail. And last but not least, the Hillside Park improvements, Hillside Park Creek improvements. Several sections of Four Wall Creek and Laurel Creek will be improved within Hillside Park. The work to rehabilitate the creek shoreline will minimize the risk of erosion and bank failure, which could lead to flooding and damage to nearby infrastructure. It will also improve the water quality in the creeks and promote a healthy, diverse habitat for fish. Next slide is the community impacts of what we do in engineering services on a daily basis. And the impacts are as follows. Address current and future infrastructure needs to accommodate growth and development, minimize impacts to natural environment, existing infrastructure, and the public, enhance quality of life, foster healthy neighborhoods and a strong community with safe, accessible, and vibrant public spaces. I'll now call on Beth Maxwell to present key initiatives for the building division.
Thanks, Francis. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to present, switch slides, not engineering. I'm going to present key initiatives for 2024 to 2026 for building standards. So our primary legislative requirement is Building Code Act enforcement. So this includes plans examination, permit issuance inspection, and any legal enforcement as required. So that's our primary role. The next key initiative will be the replacement of our public services portal. So in 2023, we had upgraded our existing public portal system to take all permit application types. However, we're looking at modernizing that and making it more user-friendly for applications coming in online. So that's our second key initiative. And the last one is public engagement and education. So with that, we like to do some social media blasts just to inform of when building permits are required, that type of thing, as well as work with our local chief building officials to provide industry with information regarding code changes and material changes. And the community impact is three main things are we ensure buildings are safe and accessible for the public, provide an accessible and convenient method of accessing building services through the public portal, and our division supports growth and development, including the construction of new housing. I will transfer to Bob.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to present Transportation Services' three-year business plan. During the next term, Transportation Services intends to pursue the following key initiatives. Expanding micromobility. We continue to build upon a successful launch of the city's micromobility program. This program provides residents with an alternative mode of transportation through shared use e-bikes and e-scooters to move about the city. The City of Waterloo alone last year accounted for 70% of all trips made using e-scooters and e-bikes in Waterloo region. Secondly, enhancing the city's road safety action plan. As approved through the city's transportation master plan, we intend to build a robust, data-driven, and science-based road safety program. This investment in road safety will result in fewer injuries and fatalities for all modes of transportation in Waterloo. Thirdly, expanding active transportation. The city will continue to build upon its world-class active transportation network of bike lanes, multi-use trails, paths for all ages and abilities. As we continue to observe a growing number of users using our trail network, we foresee the need to plan for future growth through continued expansion of the network and future updates to the Transportation Master Plan. Next, expanding the use of Level 2 pedestrian crossovers. To support the expanding active transportation network, Level 2 pedestrian crossovers serve to enhance opportunities for users of the network where they intersect with the roadway network. Lastly, we continue to modernize our winter control services, as exemplified through additional technologies like the new Getting Around map on our website and improve coordination efforts between transportation, parks, and municipal enforcement services. Together, these initiatives impact our community by enhancing sustainable transportation options, reducing injuries and fatalities on our roadways, encouraging healthier lifestyles, and improving winter control services for residents in Waterloo. Thank you very much, and I'll pass it on to Lee.
Thanks, Bob, and thanks to council for the opportunity to speak to the city utilities business plan and rounding out the IPPW divisions. So for our key initiatives in 2024 to 2026, top of the list is advanced metering. And this initiative's been going on for a few years now. And 2024, the plan is to install the remaining transmitters, and that's representing about 30% of the connections in the city. So that's pretty exciting that we'll be able to remotely read over 30,000, 33,000 different meter connections across city. And in parallel with that, we'll be working on the data portal. And that's something that's complementary to the billing portals that are now functioning. That's the water billing and the tax billing, which is a great service to the community. But the water usage portal will allow all customers to look at their detailed usage and set alerts. The middle three bullets, supervisory control system upgrade, infrastructure renewal, and systematic leak detection, those programs are really intended to focus in on essentially infrastructure best management and making sure that we're connected to our infrastructure, that we're renewing our infrastructure, and making sure that we're not losing investment in form of leaks. So every drop of water that leaves the city's distribution system is water that we buy from the region, and we're not actually selling to a customer. So it's a big loss that we need to avoid. The last bullet, sanitary master plan implementation. That's really a master plan project that is being led by engineering, but it's important to the city in terms of the growth, management of the sanitary infrastructure. So making sure that as we grow, we have enough capacity in our wastewater system to allow residential and employment lands and usage to be connected. And in terms of the community impact, top of the list obviously is safe, dependable drinking water 24/7. And alongside wastewater collection and maintenance of all of our infrastructure, the pump stations and underground, and managing stormwater. Obviously today, very important given our, some of the climate trends that we're seeing, very important. And that's both on the surface and underground. And that's to reduce erosion, flooding, and property damage. So really critical activity. And compliance is the last activity that allows us to have strong confidence in the systems to meet all regulatory and environmental standards. And I will hand it back to Mr. Ormson.
Thanks, Lee. Last question, or last slide here before we're able to take questions from council. As we think towards budget day, there's approximately $225 million in capital dollars set aside for the next 3 years in this department, so there's a lot of work to be done, and I'd be happy to take questions for any capital projects, ideally on capital budget day. In terms of operating budget, there were a couple of items that we could not unfortunately fit within the base budget. M4 and M9 in particular, as before council right now. Thanks to Mr. Witzel, we were able to take M13, which is essentially some technology, the getting around app or map that's used during winter events is one of those technological enhancements that we were able to fit within the existing budget. In terms of M4, this is an item that really is important with respect to road safety and in particular management of our crossing guard program. If there are any further questions this afternoon, Mr. Henderson can answer those. M9 is related to work within engineering services and Francis's team. There is a lot of pressure to look at enhanced streetscaping, capital projects involving the BIA, things like the Uptown Public Realm, the possibility of closing certain streets and making them more pedestrian friendly. And that's above and beyond the existing base workload that the landscape architects have, looking at site plan applications, subdivisions, community parks, and other projects. So we'll leave that thought for council, and thank you for your opportunity. Thanks for the opportunity this afternoon, and certainly it's there's a lot of things that the directors could have mentioned, but we've tried to scale it down just to give a snapshot of what's happening in IPPW.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Ormson, and to all the directors for your presentation. Before we move forward with questions, I would like to refer to Councillor Freeman, the Finance Chair, to make a few remarks about questions.
Sure, thank you. Appreciate that, Councillor Rowe. So thank you to staff and to the finance team for preparing all these business plans. They're really helpful. To council, I guess the goal of the business plan presentations are to give you a heads up in terms of high-level projects that are driving some of the growth-related items, as well as base items that are, I would say, the big pieces that the departments are working on. And you'll also see in those business plans the references to the actual budget sheets that identify how those resources are being allocated. Now is a really good time to ask questions about those big projects. You might want to ask questions around risk if they're not undertaken, risk if they are delayed, things like that. It's also really helpful to recognize that we'll be seeing business plans from each departments over the weeks to come, and so kind of looking ahead and focusing your study efforts each week per business plan is really helpful. I also want to just recognize that we've heard a lot from the broader citizenry in the last few weeks since the budget was released in December, and that I just want to acknowledge that it's really tough. Like, a lot of people are struggling to make ends meet, and that inflation is very high, and it continues to be a challenge for us as a city because we're not immune to those inflation rates as well. And so we are finding ourselves in a decision-making position where we have to make difficult decisions. And so in past years, I would say that we were able to bring budgets in, all in, including growth, that were much closer to the consumer price index. And this year, that's not what we're seeing. And so I just really want to encourage council to dig deep into this budget and think about ways in which we want to work with staff to consider what are on our must-do list, what are the items that we're willing to maybe not do and take a risk on. That's our heavy lifting. Staff have, to the extent possible, brought us everything that they thought could be done within the envelope and the direction we provided them. So I'm not sure if that's really helpful. I hope that it is, but I just really want to acknowledge that we've heard a lot of comments from the broader citizens where they're feeling overwhelmed. And I want to reiterate too that we are happy, I'm happy to sit down with people. The finance team is available to us as council to help. I know that some people have had citizens request meetings with you to go through the budget. Please connect with Brad and his team. I think they would be a really good resource, and I would really encourage you to include them in those meetings because it helps us to hear the comments, capture the concerns that people will have, and to add it to the feedback that we're getting on this budget, because I see it in a way a little bit like a planning process where we go out and we ask people for input on an application, and this is our input. This is people helping us to say, this is how I'm feeling, and it would be really great. And I don't want to load up Brad's time, but I'm actually quite confident that he would make time for that kind of thing. And if the comments are related to a particular department, again, like, Brad can connect with that department too. So, yeah, I think I just wanted to say that, and I know that if there's pieces that you as council have questions on areas where you might want to see the city make different decisions, please let me know so that I can start having those conversations with staff to say, could we push this out? Could we remove this from the budget? Could we do this? Could we do that? Please, let's have a really open conversation around that so that we're not trying to do all that heavy lifting on one day. So the mayor met with me yesterday for about an hour. We had a really good conversation, and I'm going to have a meeting with staff and the mayor and so on, hopefully sometime next week. So please keep the questions coming, keep the feedback coming. It's all really important, and more important than ever because of the fact that we are legislatively being asked to do a lot more in these 3 years than we've been asked to do in the past 10, especially as it relates to planning issues, and as it relates to affordable housing. And so so this budget, I think, really reflects that shift in terms of responsibility and potential cost implications. And so I think that's a really big piece we have to recognize. This budget, it looks substantially different than we've seen before because we're actually being asked to do some substantial things that are different than we've been asked to do before. And so all of these things go together to make our work a little bit more heavy this year. But if we get it right, I think it'll really give good direction to staff in terms of where they're headed over the next 3 years. So I hope that's helpful. And thank you again, Mr. Ormson, for kind of kicking us off with the first business plan in one of the largest departments that we have. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councillor Freeman. I would like to now open it up for questions of IPPW. Councillor Vasek?
Thanks through you, Chair Rowe. Thanks so much, everybody, for your presentations. I have a question about M4. And just because we're a new council and a big bulk of this role has been assigned for crossing guard, we did a few things about like trying to boost that program last council term. And I can't entirely remember what all of them are, but I was hoping you might be able to just do a bit of a summary about where that program, the Crossing Guard program, is, what are some of the challenges, and what are some of the things we've tried to do to strengthen it, and then if you can connect it to this job and how that will further, you see where I'm going. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Excellent question. Through you, Chair Rowe, to Councillor Vasek, thank you. And I will ask Bob maybe to layer in. As Council knows, with Crossing Guard program, we're trying to protect some of the most vulnerable users of our road network or in our active transportation network, being students and children. And that's against the backdrop of some aggressive driving, some statistics around pedestrian incidents and safety that give us new cause for concern to make sure that we have enough depth built into our Crossing Guard program. It's difficult to recruit, retain, train, and monitor crossing guards. Much of this falls to within one person, and that's the manager of transportation engineering, and we really want to bolster our capability there to make sure that we're properly resourced to make sure that this is a sustainable program, if you will, going forward. A lot of the crossing guards, have been in place for many, many years. Some have retired, and again, it's a tough job. It's a part-time job. It's required a couple times during the day. So, with that, maybe context, I'll turn it over to Bob in case he wants to layer in any other specifics.
Thank you, Ron. In addition to what Ron said, again, like crossing guards, there's no better traffic control device than a crossing guard. They provide a huge benefit to protecting our most vulnerable citizens. In addition to all the difficulties in recruiting, interviewing, scheduling, dealing with the day-to-day issues that come up, our staff are often going out and filling the position and the roles to fill the gaps where crossing guards may be sick or maybe have left the job. So the difficulties in dealing with the day-to-day issues are front and foremost there with that position. In addition to just dealing with the crossing guards, this role is actively responsible for trying to encourage kids to walk to school too as well, working with student transportation services of Waterloo region, addressing issues where there's might be issues with the roadway network and issues causing kids not to want to walk to school or have problems walking to school. So it's a multifaceted kind of role and responsibility. And as you know, in years past, we've had difficulties keeping the complement of crossing guards up to speed. So we've taken measures, some measures to improve that through adjustments in rates of pay, trying to encourage the crossing guards to join the city of Waterloo through other programs, through fitness programs and things like that. So I can't say enough how important this role is. And with layering on top of what the manager of transportation already does in terms of responsibilities, we're adding new programs like the Vision Zero program, which is a cyclical year-round process. There's lots involved in that process. The complications and the increasing demands placed on development, and as the region grows and continues to grow, there's more applications and more site plans that we provide support to our planning group with. So all those additional responsibilities makes a lot of sense in terms of kind of dividing up the roles and responsibilities and having a supervisor to take care of the lion's share of the crossing guard program, the student transportation issues, the Vision Zero. It really enables the manager of transportation to free up her time in terms of dealing with the management issues that they should be dealing with on a day-to-day basis. We shouldn't be having our manager of transportation going out and doing crossing guard duty.
Very good, thank you. That's really helpful. The other thing, so of course there are huge pressures, so I guess I ask all of my questions knowing what the proposed staff table proposed increases and knowing the pressures that people in the community are facing. And so this is a menu item, so that risks potentially increasing the percentage. So there's that. And then at the same time, we've approved the transportation master plan update, and you're talking about a lot of elements of the transportation master plan. So I just wanted to give you an opportunity to say, if you need to add anything else, to say, you know, like if we weren't to approve this menu item, what do we risk in implementing the transportation master plan, which was, I mean, one of sort of the not highlights or hallmarks, but like touchstones of the last council term, where there's a lot of community engagement, huge interest in making the roads safer. And so we're balancing these two community pieces of feedback, which is don't raise taxes and make our streets safer. So how do those align, and how are these conflicting?
Well, certainly, it's about finding a time and not overloading just one person to do everything. The Vision Zero program is an easy program to adopt. However, it's a very complex and comprehensive program to invoke and actually get network analyses done so that you actually implement safety measures on street and review how well those safety measures are working. So at the end of the day, if we don't approve this position, we will water down the ability for our manager of transportation to dedicate time to doing this. So it's a real risk, in my opinion. And with the addition of a supervisor helping out with the crossing guard program and other programs that they can certainly help out with and support in transportation, it's a vital program. And if we don't assign the right resources to it, it's difficult, very difficult to implement because of the complexities involved.
Okay, thank you. And does Vision Zero have like I can't remember, I should know this. Does it have a certification or like standard attached to it that the city either gets, you know, like gold, premium, silver, whatever?
No, not necessarily, but it involves like a number of programs that you have to be skilled in and know what you're doing. You have to be an expert and a professional in the field. If you're not dedicating yourself to it, you can lose sight of it easily. There's many steps involved, and again, it's a year-round cyclical process. It's not a one-stop shop kind of deal. It involves network screening to identify hotspots. It involves assessing what is actually causing collisions or problems in particular areas. It involves determining what the appropriate measures are to mitigate some of those collisions, implementing the solutions on street, and ensuring that there are performing, the solutions that we put in are performing as we expect. It involves education campaigns and coordinating enforcement initiatives with Waterloo Regional Police Service. It's a very comprehensive program.
Thanks so much for that, Bob and Ron.
Councillor Freeman?
Okay, so one of my questions, I had a few. So one is with regard to the heritage piece and the external consultant. I know that Mr. Cotter made reference to it being a legislative requirement, I think by 2025. I'm just wondering, what's the risk if that's not done?
Through you, Chair Rowe, to Councillor Freeman. The risk is that we have approximately 153 non-designated or listed properties of heritage interest in the city, that the way the legislation is structured, there's a 5-year moratorium for the city adding those properties back into on the heritage registry. So as developments are advanced, if those properties, which traditionally today would be evaluated as part of the development application, and if they're significant enough, could be designated under the Heritage Act. In this case, there's a 5-year moratorium that if council doesn't address this legislated timeframe and determine whether they want to designate some of the listed properties, that those properties that may have more heritage value could be lost to the community at the end of the day. So we're actively working on this particular initiative. We're not going to review all 153 properties. We're going to scope that down with the assistance of the Municipal Heritage Committee to a smaller number. I believe it's in around 46 properties have been identified. 33 of those are on the listed are on the non-designated registry, are non-designated on the registry and are listed for review. So it's really coming down to protecting our heritage assets, which brings a range of value to the community.
So just as a follow-up to that, I think there's 225,000 allocated to that. I can't remember that that's tax-based funding or if it's enterprise funding, but I think it's tax-based. Is that to retain the services of an external consultant, or is that all that work being done in-house?
Through you, Chair Rowe, to Councillor Freeman, it's a combination. We are working on it in-house, but we are retaining outside consulting services to advance this. The project, we don't have the operational capacity in the planning division to review 46 properties to the degree and the level of expertise that are required within such a short time frame that the province has imposed on us.
Okay, so is that project already gone to tender then? Is that what you're telling me?
It has gone to tender, yes. The consultant's been retained.
All right, so is it, okay, that's fine. It seems a bit moot that it's in the budget then if we've already tendered it, but okay. The next question I had was with regard to Beaver Creek. So I don't know whether Francis wants to be on the hot seat for this one. Or even Ron, whoever. But council had deferred Beaver Creek because we don't know how we can afford to do all that work. I see that it's back in the budget over the next 3 years. I guess the question is, how do we afford to do this work? I mean, quite simply.
Through you, Chair, Councillor Freeman. Currently in active discussions with the developer group in terms of proceeding with a DC risk sharing approach with the developer group. And we hope to have an update in advance of Budget Day on February 5th. There's also other potential grants that we're also exploring as well. And in terms of the actual numbers in the budget, in the project sheet, Over the second half of last year, we've actually found that some of the tender values have come down as compared to some of the numbers that we use for the project sheet. So I think there's a good chance and likelihood of the project amount being less than the cost estimate that's included in the current project sheet. So it's really a multi-pronged approach in how we could advance this project forward.
Okay, well, I'm looking at capital project sheet 590, and there's basically 18 million in 24, 26 million in 25, and 23 million in 26. Of those four funding sources, debt, DC, development, curve, and REG, which of those funding envelopes would be the shared risk envelope, or is it the whole amount?
Through your chair, the Councillor Freeman, it's the DC portion.
So the debt DC portion. So for example, in 2024, it would be 5.5 million.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. And then I guess okay, so that it would be, I think that I would really, like, I'm quite worried about this, and I think I just need to put that stake in the ground. And because I feel very strongly that we've got, I think Mr. Cotter said 22,000 units approved within the inventory. There's about 800 homes at risk on these lands if we didn't service them. But we don't know how we can pay for them. So I think I just need to put that stake in the ground to council. And I thank you so much for answering my questions on that one. The next question I think that was on your sheet too is the civic common. And for the civic common, I just wondered if that timing of pulling the trigger to do the civic common work is aligned with anything else that's happening more broadly in the municipality, say with the region or GRT or anything like that, or some of the development applications that are there, or whether they can be moved around within the 3-year budget envelopes. Because I think, I feel like we have a short-term, maybe not short-term, but we certainly have a lot of pressures over these 3 years. So I just had a question about the civic common.
Yeah, through your chair, the Councillor Freeman, great question. That's been taken into account as part of the project planning. The plan is to commence with preliminary design later this year, and construction not commencing until 2027, just to
Okay.
account for the different development applications, changes in the uptown, just to give us flexibility with the project.
That's great, thank you. So I had, my next question is around the public services portal for building standards. So I know that it's an enterprise unit that you're managing, Beth, and I had a question. So is the portal funded entirely through your enterprise?
Through you, Chair, to Councillor Freeman. So we're still looking at the options for the portal and what's included in that. So we're looking at combining the whole development approvals process ideally, ultimately. That's the kind of the grand vision of what it will look like. So we're not that far in the planning process at this point. I think there's the building component, and we have that piece for building permits, but then we would like ideally to be able to integrate site plan or the initial planning approvals processes in there and engineering as well, so that the developers and applicants that come in have all of their information contained within one place. So that also involves some back-end system work as well as the online public portal system. So in short, I don't really have an answer to that at this point because we're still in discussions about what that's actually going to look like ultimately.
And then with regard to the O&M and the maintenance from the IT team,
Yep.
so does that still get funded out of your enterprise unit, is through internal transfer, or how does that work?
So we do maintenance costs as part of our enterprise budget and capital projects, but it likely would be a proportion, so building standards wouldn't pay for the whole scope if the whole scope of that software isn't within building standards. But again, that's not complete. Like right now, there's some division of those costs with municipal enforcement services where they're also using Amanda, and there's corporate overhead in that as well. So it's not just strictly funded through the enterprise.
Yeah, it's just, I recognize that Max Min's team have resources allocated towards upgrade of software, management of software, IT solutions associated with users. And so it would seem to me that you would also tap into that IT resource. And so I'm just trying to understand whether there's internal transfers on that from an enterprise.
So I think, and Andrew's here as well, but I think those are covered in, so building standards has our overhead costs as well, and I believe there's some of those IT and overhead, but then there's also in operating. So it's not specifically funded from one area or another.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. It's just, you know, a lot of citizens have identified that instead of looking just to the tax base as a resource for funding, whether we should be looking at user fees and making sure that those user fees are actually paying for the resources that are needed. And so, you know, recognizing that it's an enterprise process, that it's users that pay for building services in many respects, making sure that we've covered those internal transfers.
Yeah, so that's correct. That is being done, yeah.
That's helpful, thank you. In terms of transportation services and fleet replacement in particular, I don't know if this one's for you, Ron, but again, like I've certainly heard citizens ask the question about, again, we're finding ourselves, everyone's looking at ways to tighten their belt. A lot of people are deferring purchases on new vehicles, shall we say, to try to extend the life of what we have. And I just wondered whether or not there's, like where we are kind of in the asset management framework, whether or not some of the fleet replacement and conversions to electric vehicles, again, could be moved in the budget or delayed until inflationary rates are lower. I'm just asking for your thoughts.
Through you, Chair Rhoda, Councillor Freeman, excellent question. Fleet costs are very high. I think I would probably feel more comfortable if the answer came from corporate services, maybe Brad or someone would maybe layer in on my response here. But I do know that much of our heavy equipment fleet is very new relative to what typical commercial or municipal fleets are, so that's the good news. I also know that we have made some strides toward getting some electric vehicles. We have an F-150 Lightning, or two maybe at this point. We're looking at the infrastructure needs for those. In terms of deferring the purchases or looking at sort of how the fleet replacement cycle would take place, I would again feel more comfortable if perhaps Brad would layer in.
Thanks, Ron, through you. Chair Rhoda, Councillor Freeman, and of course, when Corporate Services is here on the 29th, maybe Tracy Bell would like to expand upon this. Oh, Tracy's here. Oh, okay, excellent.
Feel free to move into the hot seat
Yeah.
too, Tracy.
I can start, and then Tracy can definitely layer in. I say, in terms of electric vehicle transition, we have received some questions from the residents around that. And so where we are finding it operationally feasible, we are making that transition, and we're trying to leverage incentives from the federal government to help offset that cost premium. In terms of delaying the replacement cycle, that does come with some risk in terms of increased operating costs if we extend that useful life too far into the future. And so that's definitely a factor we would need to look at as well. So Tracy, maybe you want to layer into that.
Yes, I think Brad covered it for the electric vehicles that we have on order now. They're primarily our light and medium duty, our heavy duty vehicles. There's really no viable alternatives. So it is a small segment of our fleet that can be transitioned to zero emission at this time. As far as delaying replacement, we do a condition assessment before we replace any vehicle. So we don't just go by year, we go by their condition, the amount of service work that's done. So we do have the mechanics on site, and if it's costing a lot to repair, or if they're in the shop more than then they're on the road. We definitely want to replace them. We also want to replace them when they're still usable to get some money. So we auction off our replacement vehicles and we use that money to help fund back into the equipment reserve. So we want to get some value out of our replacements and eliminate the downtime of the vehicles.
That's great, thank you very much, I appreciate that. I know that in this particular department's budget, there's a, I don't know whether it's a new vehicle for water services. And I guess my question on that one was just, is that an enterprise-based purchase? Or is that a tax-based purchase? I don't know whether Lee might know. I can't remember which budget sheet it is, sorry.
Yeah, through Chair Rowe to Councillor Freeman. Was that an electric vehicle? No?
It's not an electric vehicle. It
okay.
it was a new water services vehicle, and I thought it was new, like not a replacement.
We did get a service truck recently, and that's actually a very long procurement because of the supply chain. So I think that truck was the service truck was ordered 2 years ago, or actually 2.5 years ago, and I think we just took delivery of it. So that was to replace a service truck that needed to be taken off the road. So we were just talking about that truck this week, and there is a truck that has holes in the, basically needs a $7,000 transmission, and it has a hole in the passenger side. So it's a Fred Flintstone truck right now.
Okay. As long as they're not pedaling it with their feet. Thank you for that, I appreciate it. And then I guess the only other question I had that I could think of was the Hillside Park work, and just whether, like, what component is the lighting component, and whether that's a critical piece. Like, I know that it's part of our water loop, but a lot of people see Hillside Park and the Laurel Trail replacement work as being kind of a natural area, and so I'm just not sure about lighting that, so I don't know who wants to take that on.
Through you, Chair.
Councillor Bassick will remember that it's a pristine environmental area, and that flooding of overhead lights into that space was negative.
Through you, Chair, to Councillor Freeman, just to confirm, is the question related to the lighting for Laurel Trail between Pepler, right? Yeah, so great question. This project was initiated in response to public's request for lighting along that section, as well as the recently completed House of Friendship in the area. We knew that we had to advance this project as soon as we could. So thanks to the PM, Emily, and also the utility, our utility partners, lights were actually turned on just before the holidays. And that's the first phase of the project. And then the next phase is going to be completed this spring, which is the activation of the trailhead where it intersects at Brighton Street there.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Bodley.
Sorry, trying to get myself organized here. I guess I want to start with maybe an overarching question that isn't necessarily related to IPPW, might be more of a question for Brad and or Philippa. And I guess it layers into the Beaver Creek Road conversation that Councillor Freeman was alluding to. Am I accurate in saying that we are yet to have complete regulations from Bill 23 to give ourselves a understanding of how large, primarily DC-funded projects such as Beaver Creek Road project are going to be paid back over time? Do we have an update on that? And are there any comments related to that as pertains to the Beaver Creek Road reconstruction, given its size.
Through Chair Rowe to Councillor Bodley, at this present time, we do not have the full legislation, the regulations, and the ongoing question and answer around how municipalities will be made whole. Groups such as AMO and MFOA continue to push for that. So there is that remaining unknown in regards to the Beaver Creek construction, but what staff is currently pursuing and what Francis noted is a grant that the province has announced, the Housing Enabling Water Fund grant opportunity, which we think has some potential. We're waiting for that program to be launched through discussion with the province. Information is that will be launched later this month. And so that's something that we are keenly monitoring. And then in addition, what Francis noted around the shared risk approach with the developers on coming to an agreement on how the DCs on that particular project could be front-ended to help provide council some of that comfort. So more to report back, in particular on that project on February 5th.
Thank you for that. And I guess in terms of helping me to understand how it pertains to the tax increase that we're looking at, if this project, I'm not suggesting that this project should be deferred any further at this stage anyways, open to hearing conversation from the rest of my council colleagues, but should the project be deferred, canceled, eliminated, if it was not on our books at all in some world, how does that impact directly the tax increase over the next 3 years?
Through you, Chair Rowe to Councillor Bodley, I think the short answer is it isn't impacting the property tax increase at this time, as the DC challenges around collections would be a future issue for us to address. So this conversation is around into the future where potentially we're not able to fully recover the DC cost. Of course, we would recover a portion of that, a large portion under the phasing scenario where we're able to collect 80%, 85%, et cetera, up to 100%. So that's really the risk scenario on this project is we're not able to fully recover that DC investment, and then therefore we're adding pressure to the tax base or we're being funded through some other mechanism. But at this point in time, it would have zero impact on the 3-year budget that's before you, but we're looking at it from that longer term risk perspective.
That's really helpful, thank you. And then a question, I guess, specifically about the project that may be for Francis or Ron is, so it's this project, at least since 2018, in my time on council, has been in the first year of the budget and the subsequent 2 years afterwards, every single time it's come forward. And I know that there has been some challenges, both appeals and things like that with the development that's associated with this project. Seeing that it isn't 2024 this year and 2025 and 2026, and noting that it is a non-routine item, what level of confidence do staff have that this is actually going to come to us to be tendered and move forward in 2024, given everything that's going on around the development and where we're sort of at today?
Through you, Chair, Councillor Bodley, great question, Councillor. At this time, staff are moving forward with the project, trying to move it towards potentially a late spring tender date. So there's still a lot of hurdles to overcome, still approvals from regulatory agencies required, property acquisitions, and obviously dealing with the developer group as well too. This is a fairly aggressive schedule, but there's a level of confidence that we could proceed later in the year. Late spring is a little aggressive, but perhaps midsummer or later.
Okay, thank you for that. And I do just want to signal, I guess, like the importance of this project. I have no other questions on it, but I know that not only from a leveraging and moving forward the development that's slated for the corner there. But it's just, as you noted, it's currently a rural road within the middle of the city, and there's significant upgrades that need to happen for the residents that use those areas, the existing residents who use those areas of the city to commute into town. So, thank you for that. My other questions are planning questions. Thanks, Francis. When I look at the items that we've got before us, and please accept my apologies for trying to calculate these on the spot, but we've got 0.32% of our tax increase in sort of committed service level increases with respect to planners. We also have another 0.23 that's in corporate services under legal services to sort of help facilitate some of the regulatory changes that Councillor Freeman alluded to around Bill 109 and 23. Those have been committed to. We then have 0.48, which is 4 planners, 3 development planners and a site plan coordinator. Over the course of the next 3 years, in addition to another paralegal, that's 0.11. When I total all of that, that is of the tax increase that's being proposed in service level changes is 1.14% of our tax increase going towards regulatory changes. I actually don't know if I have a question here, but I just wanted to highlight that it's a significant percentage of what we're talking about in our 3-year budget. And maybe to wrap it in a question, I'll ask about the non-committed increases, the four planners, and what the risk would be to the city if we don't advance those 3 development planners and the site plan coordinator in terms of being able to meet our new regulatory timelines that the province has imposed upon us.
Through you, Chair Rowe, to Councillor Bodley, great question. As Council is well aware, there's continually shifting sands when it comes to provincial legislation, particularly around land use planning. Through two core changes, Bill 109, Bill 23, those 2 documents have effectively said to municipalities, move your planning applications through in a more streamlined manner, build houses faster. So that's the marching orders the province has imposed upon municipalities, which is challenging for urban areas such as the city of Waterloo, where 90% of our development is infill and intensification, a lot of large-scale applications which are very complex. Certainly, we've managed for many years with a fairly lean planning complement, but with the timeframes of 60 days for a site plan application and 90 days for a zone change, given the scale and intensification proposals that this municipality sees and council has to wrestle with on a regular basis, it's extremely challenging us for the planning division to process those applications within the timelines. And under Bill 109, if we don't process the applications within the timelines for a zone change application, we start to refund application fees, which then is a real challenge because the majority of development planners are funded by the application fees that are brought into the city. So there's a challenge there for sure. The other component that we get into is, again, the housing pledge that council has committed to the province of bringing forward over the next decade 16,000 units. And again, to get those units constructed, we need to move forward with a lot of planning applications. As council is aware, we approve a lot of applications, not necessarily do shovels hit the ground. So this is a continued work effort with the development industry to balance all of those objectives, but we want to make sure that we have a good supply of approved development in the queue, that as markets warrant and conditions are favorable to allow shovels into the ground, houses can be constructed as quickly as possible. So those are the general risks.
That's great. Thank you, Joel, for adding some color there. And my last question is also for you. And I know that Commissioner Ormson alluded to some of the fact that this is just touching the surface on all of the initiatives that staff in all of the departments are working on as part of their 3-year business plans. But I wanted to ask specifically about something that's not in here from a planning perspective around green development standards, and whether that is considered a key initiative from a business planning perspective for planning staff, and how that is intended to move forward in the coming years with our community partners.
Yeah, through you, Chair Rowe, to Councillor Bodley. It is certainly an initiative that we are working on. It's actually part of the affordable housing strategy. It's one of the 81 recommendations to advance that initiative because it does contribute towards affordable housing. As Council is aware, we have, and we work with WR Community Energy, who has actively taken on this initiative for all the regional municipalities to do essentially joint green development standards and move that initiative forward in a timely manner. Certainly understand that there's a number of entities that are looking to try and expedite that process, and there are active discussions with WR Community Energy to do that. In the same token, we are bound by legislation, and there's certain legislative challenges that the municipality must try and balance with green development standards, in particularly ensuring that the requirements of the building code are achieved.
Thank you. Mayor McCabe.
Thank you. Through you, Councillor Rowe. Since you're still there, I'll start with planning. I just wanted to clarify, you had I think I heard you say there was 22,000 housing units that have come through in 2023, but in another document, I had seen 11,000. So I just wanted to double check how many have come, housing applications. I know they're not all approved yet, but how many have come in 2023?
So through you, Chair Rowe, to Mayor McCabe, I think the 11,000 was a mid-year projection,
Okay.
or target as to what we had received at that point in time. So our year-end calculations are, we received 49 pre-consultation and 13 actual submissions for official plan amendments, zoning bylaw amendments, and draft plans of subdivision, totaling collectively for those 49 applications, 22,047 units. So that was for 2023. Those are the applications that have either come in and said, what do we need to do to file a complete application, or those that have actually filed complete applications with respect to OPs, zoning bylaws, and draft plans. It does not include site plan applications, consent applications, condominium applications that are also being worked on by the planning division, nor any applications that have been undertaken in years past. So there's a lot of development. I don't have those total numbers, but I can tell you so far this year we've received 3 residential related applications, 4 in total, but 3 are residential, and they're totaling about 1,500 additional units beyond that 22,000 number. So
Wow, those are incredible numbers. Doesn't sound like it's going to slow down in 2024, but thank you for that clarification. I think it's just to comment on the planning staff, because I suspect I mean, 7 new staff in one department can sound like a lot, but in my mind, it's like we either pay for staff or we're going to be returning the application fees. Is that kind of a simple way to put it, or too simple of a way to put it?
yeah, through you, Chair Rowe, to Mayor McCabe, certainly we would be returning application fees. Also part of Bill 23 that is in motion is the delegation of additional authority. Again, the downloading of responsibilities to the municipality, right? And those become, again, legislative responsibilities the city is going to have to undertake. And to do that, we need individuals to do that work. So there's a lot of complexities to this legislation, but essentially is pushing more responsibilities down to municipalities like the city of Waterloo, and that's resulting in the need for additional staff.
Okay, thank you. I just had another question for Francis about the Beaver Creek. This might be our favorite topic today. Just one question, because Councillor Freeman and Councillor Bodley asked a couple of the questions I had, but so I know you mentioned that there's some discussions underway, but I'm just wondering, do we have a sense of the developers that are involved in the Beaver Creek development? Are they in a position to move ahead Or are we, like, if you could kind of give me a sense, or give us a sense of where they're at with this development? Just from that, like, what your discussions with the developers?
Sure. Through you, Chair, to Mayor McCabe. Yes, I can confirm that. The developer group want to get going with the project and start building homes, right? Building new subdivisions. Obviously, they can't proceed until, this project is completed. But there's definitely a push from their end. They want to get started as soon as possible.
Okay. Okay, thank you for that.
Yep.
Oh, sorry. Did you have something, Commissioner?
Thanks, Mayor. Through you, Councillor Rowe, just to layer in, and staff are very happy that Council has asked about this project because it does represent more than 25% of the total $225 million that's in the 3-year capital budget. And just to build on what Francis mentioned and Brad and others this afternoon, there is really good confidence that staff have. We met the developer representatives of the developer group just this past Friday, that they sense there is demand for what the product is that they want to build out there. And that's to say it's a mix of housing choice. It's single family, typical singles, it's multi-res type stuff as well. And with respect to the finances, we do believe that there's going to be a significant appetite amongst those developers to do some risk sharing if that means advancing the project. And again, that's to say that they would contribute a portion of that DC money, ideally up front through an advanced timing of infrastructure agreement, and then be paid back as they service their subdivisions. Those lands will also take a number of years to build out, so it's quite possible that DC rates will change during that horizon as well, meaning that the DC revenue should increase if we look at what a proper DC rate for that area would be when we look at our DC bylaw. And in addition to that, the developers themselves will be putting in a substantial amount of capital, particularly on the stormwater management side. The communal stormwater management solution out there is valued at least about $12 million. So that's money that they will invest to support the growth of those subdivisions. Beyond that, the city needs to reconstruct those roads. As council knows, they're old rural cross sections. There's no active transportation infrastructure. Chris Hodgson kindly reminded me this afternoon that the trail around the Laurel Creek Conservation Area is actually tied to this capital project. So we have another reason to actually get in there and reconstruct those roads, in addition to looping water mains and just rebuilding, what needs to be rebuilt there. So we can provide more definitive answers on capital budget day. I expect some correspondence from the developer group to confirm their interest in partnering on the costs. And I think as time goes on, these projects never get cheaper to construct, although the good news is construction tender prices have come down recently. So if we're lucky that the quantum of the $60 million that's in the budget may actually be a little bit less than that when we actually go to tender. But as Francis said, we're ready. There's been a very good, robust design advanced by his team, and the developers sound willing to partner.
Thank you both for that explanation and additional information. I have questions about other divisions, but I'll just wait and let some others go ahead.
Councillor Wright.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. I have a question related to engineering on the, let me find that, on the Uptown Public Realm implementation. So I just noted that in our business plan, we have a page for the Civic Common. It points to capital reference 570, it's 232,000. But then we don't have a page that describes what the other engineering services are that come into play in 2026, and I just wondered if you could help to shed light on that.
Through you, Chair, to Councillor. So with respect to 2024 in the Civic Common funding there's funding to get the project started, to hire a consultant and come up with a feasibility and preliminary design. There's a lot of moving pieces as well too, hence there's no funding from 2025, 2026, not until 2027 for construction there. As Councillor Freeman mentioned, there's development there with the region, so there's going to be some moving pieces there as well too. Also, we'd like to conduct an extensive public consultation process as part of the preliminary design work. So we know that's going to take a little bit of time. before we can proceed with construction. Hence, there's a gap there in terms of available funding.
Okay, I think that the question I have is specifically related to reference 571. So it ends up there in 2026, and it's about 1.1. So it's underneath in the actual budget lines, it's underneath the Civic Common Park on the Uptown Public Realm implementation. So I'm just curious what that is.
Sorry, through you, Chair, is there a description there? My apologies, I don't have that project
There
sheet
isn't,
handy
it's reference number 571, and it says Uptown Public Realm implementation, and then it starts in 2026. But I didn't find a description of it anywhere, so I was curious what it was.
Through you, Chair, to the Councilor Wright. I'd have to look into that, Council. Oh, it's right there. Sorry, my eyes aren't the greatest here.
We have a sheet for that? Oh, great, yeah. that's all
Oh,
it is.
yeah, sorry.
Okay. Okay, thank you for pointing that out. I can go and have a look at that now, thanks.
Yeah, and if I could add to Councilor Wright, so obviously the Uptown Public Realm implementation project, there's a lot of little projects that are part of that overall project. I believe this amount relates to potential improvements at the Weber Street and Laurel Trail intersection there. Hence the amount there. But there's a few little smaller type projects that are part of the public realm implementation. And I believe most of that amount is designated for the improvements at that intersection.
Okay, thank you for that detail.
Councillor Wright, are those all of your questions? Okay. Mayor McCabe?
Thank you. Just had a couple questions about, well, it could be engineering or transportation or both. It was around, just you referenced Vision Zero and they need to implement or reach the goals for Vision Zero. And so I'm wondering or curious about like what we're doing through the roads and through our transportation services in terms of street design to actually like use street design to both slow drivers, because we hear an awful lot, I know we get emails to say, leave that alone, the speeds are fine, but we also get way more emails that say that traffic and traffic speeds are the number one issue that we, one of the number one issues that we hear about, and the need to slow drivers down. So just want to make that clear. We certainly understand the need for that, but I'm just wondering, like, through what you're working on and how much of what you're doing, and I guess with engineering, is going to be able to actually redesign some of the streets so that there's beautification, placemaking, and actually some slowing down of drivers as well.
Thank you through you, Councillor Rote and Mayor McCabe. So there's a number of things we're doing. So as you mentioned, Vision Zero is key to some of what you're asking about. And the importance of the Vision Zero is to have the professional expertise running that system. But in advance of capital construction, it's integral with Vision Zero to identify what issues are causing speeding problems or collision problems, and then where possible, identifying the improvements that can be made to layer into the capital program. So getting those improvements into the capital projects, into the design stage so that they can eventually be designed and built on street. There's systemic issues that are layered on top of that. There's things that we're doing systemically to reduce speeds on our roadways through geometric design. And so some of the things that would involve is narrowing roadways, putting in islands, putting in active transportation facilities that make the road a little tighter for vehicles and give more space to the active transportation users, implementing other features like street trees, and I could go on. There's a number of systemic issues that get layered into the capital program, but on a capital by capital project basis, the issues are looked at in a little bit more detail, and I don't know if Francis wants to layer in on that, but
Thanks, I appreciate that, because I think it's important to, I mean, in my mind, for people to think about the work you're doing, and I do like to see that there's an expansion of the micro mobility, because, I mean, we, as the Finance Chair, Councillor Freeman was noting in her opening remarks, like affordability is, we hear about affordability constantly, and this is work that the city is doing, I think, directly to address that, right? The more we can make our streets walkable, rollable, safe for our very youngest users, to our most elderly and everyone in between, you know, that can reduce the need for people to maybe buy a second car or a second vehicle. So I think that's really important to note, and I'm glad to see that in the proposed budget. Yeah, I don't know if, Francis, if you had anything to add on the engineering thing. I'm wondering about is, you know, like there's work that your department does to build, you know, a variety of things, but like, is there work, like, do you work with our creative industries staff to kind of also look at, as you're doing your engineering work, to like how we can, you know, make it more like beautify or do some in creative placemaking as well? To kind of, you know, what's the expression, feed two birds with one stone, or one seed?
Through your chair, the Mayor McCabe. So great question. So in engineering services, obviously we manage capital projects, a lot of roads, a lot of creek rehabs, swim ponds, things like that. But we also do quite a bit of projects as it relates to public open spaces, especially in the core, right? So through the public realm strategy, Laurel Greenway feasibility study, the Willis Way master plan as well too, we do coordinate with creative services in terms of is there any efficiencies? Is there any way we can improve our project? I'll use one example recently from a couple of years ago. We worked with that team to actually beautify Willis Way. And what ended up happening was we were able to install those beautiful grates, tree grates, that was designed by a local artist. So just as an example of how our staff collaborate with different teams in the city.
Okay, fantastic. That's really great to hear. And more of that, please. And just my last question is for utilities, just about the water leak detection. Does any of what you've outlined here, and I totally get that, that the more water we can actually use that doesn't leak out, obviously that saves everyone, including our residents, significant dollars. Does the work that you're planning here, is there an impact on private properties like schools, churches, businesses, in residential, or is this primarily directed at the pipes that we own and manage?
Yeah, through you, Chair Rowe, to Mayor McCabe. It's the leaks that we've been finding. They do fall in numerous places, but what we'll do when it comes to repair is go through proper notification and minimization of any disruption to businesses and, you know, schools. So we follow, you know, we'll follow those protocols, so we're not disrupting the community. But we find them, you know, they'll be on streets, they'll be on, we actually just had 2 repairs last week on Herb Street. So, you know, very busy, busy street, and, sorry, Bridgeport it was. And, you know, when we have those disruptions, we work with transportation to make sure that we have safe lane closures and try to minimize as much as possible the impact to the community. But, you know, we do have them occurring on side streets and in the core. So, but we always try to, or we always do notify and make sure that the businesses are not impacted. So, and we'll bring in water trucks and make sure that nobody is without water for that has a critical operation. So we've worked with schools before to do that in the city. So that works pretty well. And I think, you know, we get some complaints sometimes about notice, but generally everybody understands once we explain, it impacts more than just you, so.
Thank you for that. I guess partly what I was wondering is, like, if the leaks are happening not on our property, does this system, like, how do we work with the people, like, if the leaks are happening on a private business's property and that, is there something in this system that will either help us kind of identify that or help us work with them to help them address leakages that are on, when I say private, I just mean not the
right.
city's property.
Oh,
Sorry,
yeah.
I wasn't clear.
Yeah, sorry, so I
But
didn't.
that other
I
information was helpful.
Misinterpreted that of it. We might find, we haven't found any yet, but we will find, especially service connections. So if there's a service onto a private property, we have found leaks in the past that are on the private property, and at that point we need to make a call. If it's right at the property line, that's something that we'll repair because it's likely a boundary valve, and that's our responsibility. But if it's let's say if it was a more significant leak, we would be notifying, let's say, a property owner. Or if it's a industrial or multi-unit res, we'd have to work with them to say, hey, listen, we're hearing a leak, and you need to repair that. So we've done that for condo corps in the past, where we'll work with them and try to help them as much as possible. But it is their infrastructure, so they do need to bear the cost of that. So.
Do you have any further questions, Mayor McCabe? No, for sure. Council, does anyone else have any further questions? No? Okay. All right, thank you so much, Mr. Ormson and directors. That was an excellent presentation, and thank you for answering all of our questions. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the consent motion. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Freeman, seconded by Councillor Hanmer. All in favor? That is unanimous. Okay, we will move forward with staff reports, and I just wanted to mention again that the surplus property report has been deferred to February 22nd. And I wanted to mention that we will be adding a late starter, the CUPE ratification of Canadian Union of Public Employees, Local 1542, at the end of the staff reports. So, I would like to begin with the construction communications best practices and a presentation by Louise Finley, Stacey Abbott, and Amy Ross. I'm sorry, Jessica Brown and Amy Ross.
Good afternoon, Councillor Rowe, Mayor McCabe, and councillors. I'm joined here today with my colleague Jessica Brown to present construction communication best practices. An internal working group was formed in 2022 to develop a best practice document for internal staff. The goal of the document was to focus on improving accessibility path of travel through and around construction projects in the city, and provide information and tools for project managers to ensure that active transportation users receive consideration when planning and executing construction projects. The working group was comprised of the following staff members. From the Ready team, Amy Ross. From Corporate Communications, we had Carrie Van Niekerk and Stacey Abbott. From Engineering Services, we had Gavin Van Meer and Jessica Brown. And from Transportation, we had Helga Bowman and myself. I will now pass it to Jessica to continue with the next couple of slides.
So the construction communication best practices provides details on a citywide standard for construction projects and is divided into 4 main sections. Section 1, the construction notice, provides information and tools related to the public communication methods and timelines. Section 2, supplementary traffic control, provides information for traffic control, city permit requirements and standards that are to be followed. Section 3, technical guidance for construction spaces, provides tools and guidance for maintaining pedestrian accessibility to the extent possible within the construction spaces themselves. And Section 4, Appendices, provides templates and examples that project managers may find helpful in their projects. The working group recognizes that the recommendations laid out in the document may not always be possible due to unexpected circumstances. City staff are encouraged to document and discuss the details of their projects with their managers, corporate communications, or an accessibility advocate to find solutions that work best. It's important to remember that this document is a supplementary resource to the minimum requirements of the Ontario Traffic Manual, OTM Book 7, and the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act, AODA. In terms of the project's timeline, a draft document was presented to GRAC, WACAT, and age-friendly city committees in the fall of 2022 for feedback. Taking feedback from committees and the 2023 version of the best practices document was finalized in fall 2023. We then held staff information sessions to introduce the document to key internal staff that are likely to work directly with city construction projects. The divisions that participated were engineering services, transportation, city utilities, and communications. The document will be piloted for the 2024 and 2025 construction years, and the working group will then reach out for feedback to be reviewed and incorporated in future updates for public release.
Thank you for your time. Does anyone have any questions for us?
Thank you. Council, any questions? Councillor Hanmer.
Thank you, through you, Chair Rowe, and thank you for the update on where things were at. I had the privilege of being at the GRAC meeting when you presented the draft. So I'm curious, and I appreciate that we're doing the pilots. Is there a plan to take back the final document to GRAC, WACAT, and the age-friendly committees? I think it would be important for those committees to know what's going on, and especially if the pilot's going for 2 construction years. So that was one question. And then the second that goes along with that, I'm hoping we're not waiting until the end of the 2025 construction time to get feedback.
No, I can jump in. The plan is to have annual feedback every year. So we want to give ourselves sort of grace and space within 2024 and 2025 to really tweak the process and the document so that it works best for our staff and for contractors that will be following the guidelines. So we'll be reaching out to those committees, GRAC, WACAT, and age-friendly communities for feedback as well annually. So the 2024 version of the document will just be that little bit better, and then 25 we'll have improvements and feedback again.
Great. I was hoping that would be the answer. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor Hanmer. Any further questions, Council? No? Thank you so much for your presentation. Okay, I would now like to, oh, so sorry, I always forget that part. Okay, could I have a mover, please, for the motion? Yes, Councillor Hanmer, and a seconder, Mayor McCabe. All in favor? That is unanimous. Okay, our second staff report is the AMCC Sportsplex and Waterloo Public Library McCormick Branch Library Renovation Project and Funding Release Request, and that will be a presentation by Heather Liddycote.
Good afternoon, Chair Rowe, Mayor McCabe, and members of council. Just before Heather gives the presentation, I just want to take the opportunity just to steal a moment and do a brief introduction. So we're really excited that Heather is here as our new Senior Project Manager in FDMS. And so with this being her first council meeting, I just wanted to welcome her to the team here. And just as an interesting note for council, Heather, although is new to the city, is not new to working on city facilities. And Heather was actually the structural engineer for the East Side Branch Library. So we're really excited that she's here, a part of our team, and I think a really great fit. And we look forward to her bringing her expertise on this next really exciting library project over at Alberta McCormick Sportsplex. So with that, I'll turn things over to Heather.
Thanks, Kevin. Good afternoon, Mayor and councillors. As I kick off this presentation, I'm thrilled to share with you that the Waterloo Public Library McCormick branch is commemorating its 50th anniversary this upcoming Saturday. The McCormick branch, which opened its doors on September 15, 1973, holds the honor of being the first branch in the WPL system, and it continues to be a cherished location within the community. It is fitting that the city is embarking on a revitalization project on this milestone anniversary. The city has successfully completed the initial groundwork for 2 exciting projects at the Albert McCormick Community Center: the AMCC Energy and Accessibility Retrofit Project and the AMCC and WPL McCormick Branch Library Renovation Project. The AMCC Energy and Accessibility Retrofit Project is set to receive funding through the federal government Green and Inclusive Community Building Program grant, amounting to $2.4 million. To adhere to the completion deadlines stipulated by the grant, the city has strategically decided to implement a phased construction approach. Phase A will focus on the AMCC Energy and Accessibility Retrofit Project, followed by Phase B dedicated to the AMCC and WPL McCormick Branch Library Renovation Project. Both projects will enter the design phase simultaneously due to synergies between the 2 phases of work. However, the design portion for Phase B will take more time, as it is critical to ensure proper engagement is completed and we successfully capture the requirements for the final product. The city has also applied for the second intake of the federal government Green and Inclusive Community Building Program grant and are hopeful that we will be successful. This success could open up an additional source of funding for the project. In order to properly prepare for the AMCC Energy and Accessibility Retrofit Project, the city hired consultants to complete a feasibility study. This study was completed in the fall of 2023, and it examined individual greenhouse gas reduction measures and strategically consolidated them into comprehensive scenarios, which would allow the city to hit the 30% greenhouse gas reduction that is stipulated by the grant. Achieving this 30% reduction in current greenhouse gas consumption equates to over 120 tons. Some of the greenhouse reduction measures that the city will look at can be seen on the screen. These measures are in line with the city's firm commitment to reaching its greenhouse gas reduction goals. During the design phase, the project team will collaborate with the consultant to identify measures that align the budget with the greenhouse gas reduction requirements. The project has an overall budget of $3 million, which includes $2.75 million in construction and $250,000 for soft costs, which include consulting, fees and permits, and general requirements. The budget for this project is supported by a $2.4 million federal Government of Canada grant administered through the Infrastructure Canada Green and Inclusive Community Buildings Program, along with an additional $600,000 from the city's Capital Infrastructure Reinvestment Reserve Fund. Now on to Phase B of the project, the AMCC and WPL McCormick Branch Library Renovation Project. In December 2022, the WPL shared a visioning report for the McCormick Branch, revealing insights from community engagement session and feedback from key WPL members. The report proposes several key changes, including greater visibility for the library as a primary entry point, an expanded space catering to the modern needs of the library, incorporating children's space, bookable study, and quiet workspaces, integration of digital maker technology, environmental education, and dedicated space for library and partner program services. In 2022, the city engaged a consultant to complete a feasibility study to explore options for extensive renovation and an eastward expansion at the facility. Collaborating with the city and WPL staff, the consultants utilized the results from the visioning report to propose improvements for the AMCC. These included a new city community room with a commercial kitchen accessible from the recreational complex, an accessible entrance to the library from the recreational complex, a new exterior building entrance granting access to the entire complex, renovation and potential expansion of the branch library and adjacent public washrooms, and a dedicated library program room to support a wide range of community programming and larger events. As part of the envisioned improvements, the city is dedicated to enhancing inclusiveness and accessibility within the facility. Several planned improvements include a universal washroom accessible to the entire AMCC complex, new washrooms, including barrier-free washroom stalls, and a new prayer and quiet room. Throughout the design, the project team will collaborate with the READY team to ensure community engagement is initiated early in the project and outcomes of the engagement are incorporated in the final design. As part of the feasibility study, the consultant has put together several design concepts that incorporate the envisioned improvements outlined in the study. Displayed on the screen is the design concept 3A, aligning most closely with the allocated budget of the project. This concept includes the addition of a universal accessible washroom, as well as a prayer and quiet room, which can be seen in blue. It features a new prominent entrance with accessible connectivity to the sportsplex, an enlarged city programming room with a commercial kitchen, and a renovated library space with the inclusion of a children's space, bookable study rooms, and a gaming computer room. Notably, the library in this concept doesn't include a dedicated program room and relies on the availability of the new community room for its diverse programming and larger events. Design concept 3B closely mirrors 3A with slight modifications. In this iteration, the library collection area and collaboration spaces are reduced, and there is the inclusion of a dedicated library program room, highlighted in red. The final design is Concept 1, representing the most extensive renovation and addition. It fully incorporates the envisioned improvements highlighted in the feasibility report. The image on the screen illustrates a 275-meter squared building addition, allowing for an expanded library space and featuring a dedicated library programming room. The feasibility study determined that Concept 1, involving extensive building renovation and expansion, is the preferred option. However, at this time, the city is moving forward with either Concept 3A or 3B to stay within the allocated budget. As the city progresses through the schematic design phase, collaboration with consultants will focus on exploring opportunities to bring the project more closely in line with Concept 1. Some potential strategies to be explored include investigating alternate funding sources, setting the project up for future additions, and refining the cost estimates to better align the design with Concept 1. The staff tabled budget for Phase B, the AMCC and WPL McCormick Branch renovation is $7.25 million, which includes approximately $5.75 million estimated construction budget and approximately $1.5 million in soft costs. It's important to note that the $3 million designated for the greenhouse gas work is separate and not included in the $7.25 million allocated for renovation and expansion.
Heather, I just wanted to let you know we have just under a minute.
Thank you. On the screen, you can see the projected schedule and next steps for the project. The AMC project team recommends advancing the design phase of the work starting the spring of 2024. The AMCC project team would then return to council in fall of 2024 to present the results of the public engagement and the proposed schematic design and current costing for the project. As well, the AMCC project team will also present the energy and accessibility upgrades being pursued and demonstrate how they align with the green building policy. At this time, we ask the council endorse the recommendations as laid out in the report. Any questions?
Thank you so much. Perfect timing. Council, does anyone have any questions? Councilor Wright.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. I'm so excited about this project, and not just because I'm on the board of the Waterloo Public Library as the council liaison, but also this is just a neighborhood that really needs this facility upgrade, so I'm super excited about it. I'm wondering if you could just go back to the plans, and what I want to talk about is, or what I want clarification on actually, is commercial kitchen versus kitchenettes and where they appear in those schemas. Just because there are a number of kitchen spaces shown, and I just need somebody to walk me through this.
So the kitchenette is shown over here. So the commercial kitchenette, I'm not sure, that will be something we explore as we get into schematic design, what exactly is needed and what we want to put in as far as requirements for the building code. And commercial kitchens sometimes require more mechanical infrastructure to support them. So that's something we'll explore in the schematic design phase. Right now, we are showing one kind of up in this corner here, and then as we move into design concept, one, again, it's in the same location, and there'll be a similar small one in the library programming room.
And in between 3A and 3B, it looked like there might be 2 kitchen spaces, or maybe I'm not.
Yes, that's correct as well. So there's a small kitchenette here as well.
My question just being, with the need for commercial kitchen space, period, would it not be smarter to maybe consolidate the kitchen spaces in a potential plan? Like, is there an advantage to that in order to actually maximize the amount of space? I'm just thinking, like, there's a large need for this, for the preparation of food for cultural events, and especially with that neighborhood and the access to the community would be really appreciated. So I'm just trying to figure out where that lands.
It will be something we'll definitely explore with our consultants moving forward, and that is actually a fantastic idea, is maybe looking at consolidating where those community spaces are and how we can share a kitchen space between those two. So,
Okay, so there's still room within the consultation process for that to be figured out then?
yes,
Okay.
these are just very high-level proposed plans right now. Through the schematic design phase, we'll really start to nail these down, and we will bring those back to council in the fall of 2024 for approval to move forward.
Councillor Hanmer.
Thank you. Through you, and building on Councillor Wright's questioning, I'm really excited to see this going to. This whole facility has needed an upgrade and changes for quite some time. Things that I'm involved in are typically on the other side of the building, so I just want to just be curious and want to make sure that when I think of Albert McCormick and the library coming there, I think of all of the users that are going to be involved in the entire building. So just your response to where the commercial kitchen might be, and then access and proximity. Can we please make sure that we're keeping in mind the users of the entire building? Because there are occasions when it would be great to have what's in the library area available, and it hasn't been in the past. So just some questions around that would happen. I think this looks great, and I like the fact that you don't have to go through the rink to get into the library anymore.
I will make sure we keep that in mind as we move forward.
Thank you.
And just if I could layer into that as well. So I think that's a really good observation, and sort of one of the key features in this project is we're trying to leverage the limited dollars we have to do as much for that facility as possible. And like Heather explained, you can really start to see that integration of the sportsplex with the library. And so even where the universal washroom has been located has been done for strategic purposes, in the sense it serves both areas of the building really well. And it really, in terms of the commercial kitchen piece, some of that conversation comes down to, if we could design sort of one programming room for city use and have a commercial kitchen for city use, it allows some of that integration with the sportsplex operations, where we start to overlap and have one room that has to serve both the library and the city. Some of those issues become more challenging from a scheduling perspective.
If I can just add on to that, then that's where all the more reason for the kitchenettes to be in different locations if you have to put the commercial kitchen in one spot. So just a thought.
Yep, noted, thank you.
Councillor Vasek.
Thanks, through you, Chair Rowe. Similarly excited as everyone else. And I don't want to get too nitty gritty into the design, but to save us all an email and to plant the seed with whoever might be interested. Like, okay, the prayer room I suspect will be a quiet room, and then you have the universal washroom right beside it, which I think could be more noisy, like it has some equipment Also, people just poop, and it makes a loud noise, and they're going to feel awkward about it, potentially. And I don't know if it'll interrupt anyone, but I think the people using the washroom could feel awkward about it, you know, because it's, in any case, just the two of them beside each other just looked to me like it could make for a uncomfortable situation, potentially. So just noting it. Maybe it'll be fine. Maybe there are constraints space-wise. It's not a deal breaker for me. I'll obviously just wanted to say it.
Thanks, we'll definitely take in that feedback, and I agree.
Mayor McCabe?
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Like others said, they're excited about this. I was at Albert McCormick yesterday for an event, and we had to go from the corridor area into the community room, and it's not great. So yeah, really great to see this coming, and excited for the community. Just a couple of questions, like engineering and the update that Commissioner Ormson's team just did was talking about the fact that some of the tender prices are coming down. Are you anticipating that in this project? And if so, like, is that an opportunity then to, you know, to do the full build out as in concept one?
That's what we're hoping. We're hoping as we get through the schematic design and really start to refine our budgets, that we'll see those numbers come down a little bit, and what we'll actually be able to achieve with our current 7.25 million will go a little further. At this time, based on the feasibility study, these were the prices that we were given, so that's what we're moving forward with. But we are hoping that that budget will come more in line with concept one.
Okay, and just on the subject of funding, I don't know if the city pursues like sponsorship, is that something that's under consideration, you know, naming a room or something like that in order to, again, achieve the full build out?
Yes, through Chair Rowe to Mayor McCabe. So those are conversations that happen, I would say, more typically with the Waterloo Public Library in terms of sponsorship and naming and things like that. So we're not currently pursuing that on the capital side of things. But we are looking at sort of those federal, provincial grants more so on our side of things to help support the capital build. But Kelly, who I know is here, could probably answer that question a little bit in more detail than me, but I think it's fair to say that the library would pursue those opportunities, but more so on the interior of the facility once it would be constructed.
Okay, okay. Well, I guess I was, like, part of my question was, like, if you were able to get the funding, you or Kelly, like, could it enable, like, the additional, like, the full build out versus, right? So if you got the money later, you know what I mean? Like, it wouldn't actually achieve the full build out.
For sure. If there's somebody out there that wants to help sponsor this project, I don't think we'd be turning that away.
This is a commercial too, yeah.
But I think we're trying to be respectful too. Obviously, this is a difficult time for people in council, and there's tough decisions here. So we wanted to bring something forward that is currently within the funding envelope. And I think as Heather said, we're optimistic going forward. Hopefully, as you noted, construction prices come down, that would be terrific. But if they don't, we've got a solid plan here going forward. And I think we're continuing to work with finance on all possible options to get that little bit extra funding we might need to really deliver the full scope here that we think we would like to. So certainly things like sponsorships, grants, we can definitely take those things away and follow up.
Okay, thank you. And my last question is just around the core cap, like the carbon reduction. And I know we have a report coming, I think it's January 29th about, or maybe later, about carbon reduction for the municipality. And I know that you've said we're going to achieve at least a 30% carbon reduction, and that's great. I'm just wondering, because we've also just said that we were going to adjust the city's goal to match the federal government's goal of net zero by 2050, rather than 80% reduction by 2050, if there's an opportunity, or what it might, if there are additional cost, if we were more ambitious in the carbon reduction opportunities with this project.
Definitely. So right now, I would say that things like solar panels would not really be funded as part of this project to the full extent they could be if we had more funding available to us. So, there's certainly some enhancements like that we would be looking at. The one thing I will say here, though, which sort of aligns with core cap and sort of those greenhouse gas ambitions, is that The bulk of the investment here is within an existing facility, so we're not increasing the footprint by building a brand-new facility. So we are looking at sort of on two-prong approach, investing in our existing facility from an infrastructure replacement standpoint, but also looking at adding new generation of technologies, upgrading building envelopes, putting in more energy-efficient equipment. And so we're sort of, investing in an existing facility, which will help us from a core cap standpoint as well.
That's a good point, that using the existing facility, that's a really good point. I get, it just prompts another question is, if we can't afford solar panels, could we rent the roof out or like at least build it so that it's able to take solar panels so we could, rent the roof out or something like that, rent the roof, raise the roof, whatever. Anyway,
Yes.
I'll just leave that with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So on, one of the things we're doing as part of our green building policy now is on any roof project that we are doing, or any kind of a project like this, we do an evaluation of the roof to make sure that it's solar ready. So that is something that we would look at as part of this project, absolutely. And Scott, our energy program manager, who is here today as well, has been doing a lot of good work in that front. So we're definitely looking at creating those opportunities so that if down the road we find, there's a partnership, we find that extra funding to invest in solar, that we're ready to go.
And if I may add to that, just around the 30% reduction. So the 30% was the reduction of the existing facility for the grant piece. So with the addition of this, we'll have electric-based heating to replace the natural gas-fired heating. And this portion, since it's a major renovation, it'll fall under the green building policy in the retrofit renovation section. And so this will be net zero ready. So we've reviewed the roof structure, so it is suitable. So when we add, there's nothing anticipated that'll stop that. So this renovation, once finished, it'll be net zero ready. When we decide, the proper solar strategy, we can put that on, and then this will not add emissions to our existing site. So, but the rest of the building HVAC is not within the scope. No problem.
Okay. Councillor Roach.
Thank you. Through you, Chair Rowe. Thank you so much, Heather, and welcome to Waterloo. So the Albert Community Center and the arena and the library, it serves as a real essential hub to our community. And 50 years, wow, that's a lot of, I'm proud to say that I recall, I lived in the ward 50 years ago and was a young guy when Albert was established. So it's gone through some wear and tear, and actually I've gone through some wear and tear over those last 50 years. But the proposed renovations to the physical infrastructure, it's not only, it really contributes to, I think, a stronger sense of community. And these upgraded spaces, as you've shown, it will, there's expansion of educational programs, cultural events, recreational facilities, so it's fantastic. So I think by approving this motion, this recommendation, we really demonstrate dedication to our well-being of community and our vision for a vibrant, inclusive, forward-looking Ward 3. So I urge my fellow councillors to support this motion.
So I take it you're the mover.
I would love to move this motion.
Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Wright, all in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you so much, Heather, and welcome to the City of Waterloo. Okay, we have one more staff report, and that's the West Side Satellite Operations Center, the funding release request. There is no presentation. However, council staff is present if you have any questions. Yes, Mayor McCabe?
But go ahead if others have questions first. No, okay. I do have a question, just was flipping to find where it was. So thanks for this report and this update. My question is about if there's any potential opportunity to partner with the region of Waterloo, because we, as you know, we have the landfill is generally in the area, and the provincial government is changing the rules around recycling, and I believe, it's all being privatized, and I believe some of the recycling pieces may be moved out of the regional facility. So I'm wondering if there's, like, if the region, if you've talked to the region, if they're open to potentially looking at surplus space that they might have that we could utilize?
Yeah, thank you. Yes, we have we started some preliminary conversation at the staff level. We just started. Seems positive, and we have to, but we haven't gone any further. But that option is still on the table. And this study, but just to make some clarification on it, this study has got two parts in it. First, to assess the existing operations and its projection for the next 20 years and to see the capacity. And then the second part is to sort of look for the facilities and the optimization portion. So regardless of the choices we are going to have, including the opportunity that we might end up having, the existing assessment is somewhat important to understand for our growth and also to sort of improve the effectiveness of the overall operations. So first part will go
So
ahead.
so the study would take that into account? Is that like through the first phase of it, with when you're studying this, that would take potentially the surplus lands the region might have at the landfill into account? Is that what you're saying? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I think that's all my questions.
Council, are there any further questions? Yes. I have a mover of you.
We'll do a bit of a turf over it, because I too would like to move it with a comment, and second with a comment can come that way too. Being the west. Being the West Side councillors, I think we both are thrilled that we're taking a look at the feasibility of having some of our services located on the west side. So I certainly am very happy to make the motion that we do this, and I appreciate Mayor's comments about looking at whatever surplus lands there might be in the area so that we're not taking away from a lot of the residential area that we've got in both our wards. But I think there's possibilities, so I am happy to move this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Hanmer. Seconder, Councillor. That's your comment? All right, all in favor? That's unanimous. Okay, I wanted to add in the staff report from Human Resources, the ratification of Canadian Union of Public Employees, QP Local 1542, Agreement 2024 to 2027. Do I have a mover? Councillor Vasek. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Freeman. All in favor? That's unanimous. Okay, consideration of notice of motion given at a previous meeting, none. Notice of motion, none. Communications and correspondence, none. Unfinished business, none. Questions, none. New business, Councillor Freeman.
Through you, Councillor Rowe, I just wanted to let council know that I would like to put my name forward to serve on the board of directors for Good Roads. You may recall that the organization was previously known as Ontario Good Roads. They've rebranded to Good Roads. They're a very strong partner to the Association of Municipalities of Ontario in terms of advocating for road safety and changes to our transportation systems as a whole. And to do this work, I need a mover and a seconder. I'm told I don't need a motion from council to do this, but I would still like to know if I have your support to do this. There isn't a financial cost to the city per se. I understand that board directors are remunerated for their expenses by Good Roads, which is different than FCM or AMO. So I guess, I'm gonna turn to the clerk for advice, whether I need a mover or seconder, or how we want to do this. It's not a motion per se, but I do need someone to agree to sign off on my nomination papers.
Through the chair to Councillor Freeman, it might be beneficial, just to be clear, if we just have a mover and a seconder that supports your nomination.
Mayor McCabe?
I just wanted to make a really quick comment to thank Councillor Freeman for taking on this role, assuming that she has, you don't really need our support, but I think it's really important that the City of Waterloo is represented, and someone like yourself with the engineering background. And certainly I would encourage council members to look at some opportunities through AMO and FCM, to serve on similar task forces or committees as those come up, because I think it's really valuable to share your collective wisdom and insights on those committees as well. So thank you very much for taking this on.
Thank you.
And happy to move it.
Nope, we're good. Yes, moved by Mayor McCabe, seconded by Councillor Bodley. All in favor? That is unanimous. Okay, for sure. Any new business? Councillor Bassick.
I have new business, and I'm going to connect it to the budget. Of course, we've had skate night, date night. It's every Wednesday in the Uptown Square from 6 to 8. I'm inviting anyone. I'll invite anyone on a date, yes. Come on a date with me, Mayor McCabe. Anyways, it's organized by the Create Waterloo Arts and Creative Industries team. DJ King Kadim, who basically is just DJing to me all the time because every song he plays is excellent and I love it. And then he moves it into another song that's also just always so impressive. And if you can believe it, last week he played Who Let the Dogs Out? Well, there was a giant dog walking pack, and I don't think it was coordinated. So that is some kind of impressive intuition, DJ intuition. And there were hot beverages from Kissing Goose Coffee Roasters food truck, and we all got some hot chocolates and apple ciders. So I'd like to acknowledge, of course, the real pressures that everybody's facing finance-wise as individual families. And I also note the importance of us looking for opportunities to reduce that burden, like Councillor Freeman said earlier. But I kind of couch that within my belief that there are big benefits to having a strong social safety net, and particularly doing that when times are hard. And so each component of this free event would have cost more than the average increase that's anticipated with the staff table budget monthly, which is about $9 a month on average. The skate, let's say you get the skates hand-me-down. That means you have no skate costs. But if you do have to go to Play It Again Sports, right now the cheapest pair there is $50 for a kid's pair. So that could cost a family of 4 $200. It could cost a family of two $200. Of course, you can also just go and hang out. If you go to Tim Hortons, 4 hot chocolates are $10. If you want to go to a skate at one of our facilities for a family of 4, it's $14. Each component is more than the $9 tax increase we're asking. And the benefits of being able to go to the Uptown Square and listen to music, it's so much better than skating. I honestly hate going skating, guys. And the only reason I love it, I know, it sucks. I love it. It's so dreamy. You go and you hold hands and you skate. It's so beautiful. But I don't like it, but I go because of King Kadim. And my family goes because they love skating. And you get physical activity, you get outside. Social isolation has increasingly been linked to huge costs. It reduces social isolation. We're supporting small businesses and artists, DJ King Kadim, of course, and the coffee roasters. And this is, I have no dollar amount attached to this, but there were some teenagers there from a youth group, and they single-handedly made everyone rotate on the ice rink. And I just thought, how great is that for the little kids who were there, like my little kids, to see these teenagers engaged in like this super pro-social, taking initiative kind of behavior. It was wonderful. Also, everyone my oldest just has such a hard time sleeping, and we got home and he slept. And honestly, I think that probably is worth the whole year's tax increase. There were people, this also has no money attached to it, but there were probably people falling in love. I can think of 2 couples that were probably on an early date. And we all had a lot of fun. So I say that as new business because, of course, I want to highlight what a great job the Arts and Creative Industries team are doing, but also to say it does feel like a big tax increase that we're asking. But that's just one example of the financial benefits that we all reap. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Vasek. Councillor Hanmer.
Thank you, and that's a very tough act to follow, Councillor Vasek. I know. I have 3 things, actually, I'd like to comment on. Since the last time council met, there have been tremendous strides in the world international stage with women's sport, and specifically in hockey, but women's sport. The PWHL launched on January 1st, as many of us are aware. What you may not be aware of is there are 3 Waterloo residents that are playing in the PWHL. Lauren Gable, Emma Woods, and Carly Olivier. 2 of them are playing for New York, Emma and Carly, and Lauren is playing for Boston. So if you do get a chance, cheer on Waterloo as you are watching the PWHL games. This past weekend, our U18 Worlds were held, Women's Worlds were held, and again, Waterloo was center stage. I think every time I watched a game, we were being mentioned. It was really cool. So the U18 sadly did not bring the gold medal home. However, they did bring a bronze medal home with a number of records, including the most number of goals scored by a Canadian in the tournament, the most number of goals scored in a tournament. So 2 Waterloo residents, again, were on that team and did very, very well. Caitlin Kramer, I should say their names, Caitlin Kramer and Abby Stonehouse. So if you want to see them, they play Sunday afternoons, 2 o'clock at Rim Park, and there is no cost to watch excellent hockey. And my last announcement is I had the privilege this morning of being part of first time in a long time that there's been a joint ministry announcement with funding coming into this area. The Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Community and Social Services, about 2 years ago, promised $330 million going into children's treatment and specifically programs for pediatrics and for youth. And today, $7 million was announced of that 33, was announced for a combination of Kids Ability, Grand River Hospital, and the Guelph Community Health Center. So it was a privilege to be, they introduced me as a city councillor, so it was a privilege to be there representing the city. But it's a tremendous investment in speech-language pathology for children and youth in our community. So it was great news.
Thank you so much, Councillor Hanmer. Does anyone else have any new business? Yes, Councillor Wright.
Thanks. Through you, Chair. I just want to acknowledge our transportation team and the amazing snow clearing that happened over the last couple of days. Mayor McCabe and I had a chance to ride with plow operators on Tuesday morning, and it was fun. Yeah, we weren't in the same plow. We were out with Brian and Dwayne, and had a great bird's eye view of the whole process. And then, of course, we got slammed on Friday night and all through the weekend. And I was also especially thankful because I had bought tickets to the Battle of Waterloo, which Mayor McCabe and I also attended coincidentally. And I got to walk there, active transportation, with my family, and the sidewalks were cleared. So I just really, big kudos out to everyone for supporting active transportation and helping us get to our local landmarks. And I'm just going to plug the Laurier men's team is at the top of their division as the season is getting towards its end. So go out and cheer for your Golden Hawks. Sorry, I'm very biased. Oh, one last thing, Councillor Vasek, my grandparents met skating. Yes. On Victoria Park Pond.
Okay, I just actually, if I can circle back for new business, I just wanted to give recognition to the Truth and Reconciliation booklet that we received today and to thank Brian Hill for providing that to all of us as we move forward in 2024 and across the next endless number of years to keep this in mind as we move towards reconciliation and what what that means and how we can implement that in our day-to-day work here at the city. Thank you. Okay. Number 17, enactment of bylaws. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Yes, moved by Councillor Hanmer, seconded by Councillor Freeman. All in favor? That is unanimous. And adjournment. Do I have a mover? Oh, I saw you, the mayor, Mayor McCabe, seconded by Councillor Wright. We're all in favor. We are done. Thank you. And thank you to our finance staff.